Okay, so good morning. We are up to Ketubot Daf Tzaddik Chet. We are at the top of Tzaddik Chet Amud Aleph. We are the second line, the last two words on the line, Hahi Itza. And so let me share my screen and we will get started. And so where are we? We have previously seen in Ketubot that a widow is entitled to be fed from the estate. But this obligation only lasts until she collects her ksuba, okay, or she remarries, okay? So the idea is that if somebody divorces his wife or passes away, no, I'm sorry, if someone passes away, not divorces his wife, if someone passes away, she's not going to be kicked out of her home immediately, but rather she can stay there and enjoy and be fed from the estate. Or at any point in time, she has the ability to say, okay, listen, I'm entitled to my ketubah, and so pay me my ketubah, and I'll go and make my own life, okay? And of course, in a world in which people have multiple wives and people are dying young, then it's not so surprising that a woman might make that decision, okay? But the point is that she only once she collects her ksuba, so then she stops being a part of the funds for her eating and for living from the estate, okay? And in the Mishnah, we saw at the end of the day yesterday, we saw a debate regarding what happens if a woman has collected part of her ksuba. The Tanakama, who the Gemara has now said is Rabbi Shimon, says the widow's no longer able to collect support, so any sale of estate property will require consultation with the court, because we saw two Mishnayos ago that there was a debate as to what requires review by the court, and a trying to collect for your food did not require. Everybody agreed that collecting food to eat did not require court review, but there was a debate about whether or not if you were collecting for the ketubah that might require consultation with the court. And the Chachamim say no, the widow may continue to collect her support even as long as she has not finish collecting her ketubah. And so therefore sales of the estate property for support, and again, sales of the estate property for support do not require consultation with the court. And so now we're going to pick up second line with a story that's going to highlight how a particular Amora ruled on this topic. So let's take a look. So there was a woman, the tafsa kasa bechaspa b'ksubasa. She grabbed the kos. She grabbed a silver goblet from her husband's estate in order to collect from her ksuba. Kitava mizone. And then she said that even though she had grabbed that, which presumably was a partial payment of her ketubah, so she then still wanted to be fed from the estate. So asayla kamei de Rava. So here we already have a court case, Mark. So the wife comes in front of Rava and says, I want to be paid. I want food to be able to eat. So Amar lahu liyasme. So Rava says to the orphans, Zilu havala mizonos. Go, you have to give her support. Meaning that we are saying that the halacha is like the opinion that says that the decision is for the wife, that she gets support even though she has collected a piece of her ketubah. So late the chash the Rabbi Shimon the Amar lo amrina mixas kesef kachol kesef, and we don't worry about the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who said that once you collect a little bit of silver, then it's like you collected all the silver. So of course that's a play on the fact that that this was a silver goblet, but in any event, so that's the story, and of course that's the key debate as to, do we consider the collection of part of something like the collection of all of something, or do we say that the leftover that has to be collected, if you have a little bit left to collect, it's still like you have the entire debt to be collected? Or do we say no, it's like whatever it is that you have, it's not like, it's almost like you don't have anything left to be collected. And again, we end up saying that it's like you still have the entire debt to be collected. So, okay, so that was case number one, and we had Rava's answer. So now the Gemara is going to address
today we're on the second floor, not on the third floor.
That's correct. Today we're on the second floor, not on the third floor. So
this Friday,
same thing tomorrow and on Friday. Yes, tomorrow you might not be here because of rain, but hopefully on Friday we'll have the same thing. So Shalach le Rabba, Rei de Rabba le Rav Yosef. So now we're going to have a question that relates to this topic, specifically the obligations of a wife to make an oath or a public announcement regarding the sale. The oath will be, we'll see that there'll be a discussion of what the oath is about. But the key is that we're now going to talk about whether an oath is required and whether any kind of announcement. So the question that Rabba, the son of Rava, sent to Rav Yosef was Mocheres Shelo Bevesin. So a widow sells a property outside of Basin. Tzrika Shvua, oh, ain't Tzrika Shvua. Does she need to make an oath? Meaning, does she need to, as we will see, does she need to convey a sense of certainty to the orphans that she sold the property for no more than what she was supposed to get? Okay, so Rabbi Yosef answers back, you should have asked, don't ask about whether or not you have to swear, ask whether or not you even need to make an announcement. Meaning, maybe it's obvious that you have to swear, maybe you even have to make an announcement publicly, because incidentally, I will note as a piece of background that, if in fact, when or property of orphans is sold to pay off debts of their father, you have to make an announcement of the sale so that the court is assured that a proper price was paid, that nobody wanted it. Basically, it's a public auction. We want to make sure that there was no side deals that resulted in the orphans not getting everything that they were supposed to. So Amar Le, Rabba explains, why didn't I ask you about that? That I didn't have a question about, because the Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rav Nachman Almana Shishama La'atzma. Because if a woman tried to estimate the value for herself in a ketubah, so she sees a piece of land, she's owed $200, and she says, this piece of land, and she'll get a public appraisal. She's not like if she's doing it herself. But if she tries to get an appraisal and says, the appraisal says it's worth 200, and she says, okay, great, I'm just going to take it and keep it for myself. So lo asa v'lo klum. She has not done anything at all. We don't allow that kind of self-dealing. So even though we got a third party to say this piece of property is worth $200 and she's owed $200. And so maybe you would say, let her just keep the property. We say, no, she can't keep the property, because we're still, again, worried about some aspects of self-dealing. So let's take a look and see what happens. So what kind of case is that? When we say that she keeps the property, heichi dami, what's the story? If there was some kind of announcement associated with it. And again, this is explaining why Rabbah was so convinced that there was not going to be any need for an announcement. Well, if there was an announcement, amai lo asa v'lo klum, why shouldn't there be a valid transaction? After all, it was publicly announced. There was a public auction, and effectively she won the auction, meaning she is the one who said, I'll take it for this price. Nobody else complained about it. So isn't that sufficient? So it must be that she took it without an announcement in this case, that in which Rabbi Zera said in the name of Rav Nachman that it's not a valid transaction. So there was no announcement. So ula atzmahu delo asav lo klum. And what did we say about it? That it's for herself, her taking it herself, that she didn't do anything. Well, what's the implication of that? That implication is that if she had done it on behalf of somebody else, well, then then what she did should be valid. It should be good, even though There was no hachraza. There was no announcement. So that seems to be a decent proof. So la'olam de achros. No, you don't have to say that. In fact, this was a proof that the story that Rav Nachman that was told in the name of Rav Nachman was about a case of no announcement. We can even say that there was an announcement. Uda amrila, because what are we telling her? We tell her, man sham lech, who appraised it for you to keep? Meaning the rabbis always understood this, as you needed somebody to transfer the assets to you. You were given the authority to transfer the assets on behalf of the orphans, but nobody gave you the authority to transfer it to yourself. In a transfer transaction, you need a transferor and a transferee. And here, she's only one person. She cannot transfer it to herself. So, as Rashi says, second line down in the narrow lines, Mimi kabalta mechirazu. Who did you, if you tried to accept it, even if there was an announcement, even you, from whom did you accept this sale? Lomi Basin didn't sell it to you. Velomi Yisomim, and the Yisomim didn't sell it to you. The orphans didn't sell it to you. Lefikach lo yatsa karka mishrusa Yisomim. So as a result, the property never left the possession of the orphans. Aval hecha deshamta lachrini. But when it comes to the approximating the value for somebody else or appraising it for somebody else, there you were given permission to take it out of the possession of the orphans. Because the chachamim gave you permission to sell, but they didn't give you permission to take. So the point is that there's a difference between permission to sell and permission to take. Permission to take doesn't give the same sense of guarantee of fair value as permission to sell. All right, because we happen to have another story. Here's another story. We had a guy who was watching over the assets of orphans, specifically either it was a fodder, some food, or for animals, or something else that was deposited with him for to watch. Azal Shema Lunafshe. But he was owed money by the orphan's father, and so he estimated the value for himself, Ba'arba Me'azuze, as 400 zuz, Iyaker. And now he took it, and it went up in value. So come bishis mi'ah, and now it was worth 600. So asala kamei to Rabbi Ami. So the whole story came in front of Rabbi Ami, and of course the guy took it as when he was owed 400, saying it's mine, and now it's worth 600. So really the orphans are worried about it. So Amar Alei, and Rabbi Ami said to the guy, Man shamlach, who approximated the value for you. You don't have the authority to sell something to yourself, to transfer something to yourself. You have the authority to sell something for the benefit of the orphans, but you don't have the authority to transfer it to yourself. So the hilchas atzricha shvua, the ein atzricha hakraza. And the bottom line is that you need an oath, but you don't need any announcement. Now Tosfos asks here a couple of questions. First, you have a question before that? Go ahead.
So he made 200, let's say he made 200.
He would have made 200, but Rabbi Ami said, no, it's no deal. You don't get to keep it. You don't get to keep it.
So
and
the deal is void.
Deal's void. All
Null
600,
and
null and void. The whole 600 goes to the orphans. Exactly. Okay? Because the guy didn't have permission. You only can do what you have permission to do. Okay. So now what happens to him? So he doesn't get punished, but he doesn't get to keep the $600. He has to give it all back to the orphans who he's taking care of. Now he's still owed $400, but he doesn't get that $200 of profit. He thought he was going to have $600 when he was owed $400. And so the orphans end up with 200, and the person who was owed 400 gets back his 400. Okay, so Tosfos has a couple of questions. One is, isn't it obvious that the widow has to swear? Because we have a general principle that anytime you take anything from orphans, you need to swear. So as a result, Tosfos explains that actually Rashi has the right idea here. It's one of those few times that he says that Rashi's right, that the oath is not, usually the oath that she makes is about being owed the money, right? So she's saying, I wasn't paid off, I'm owed the money. So yes, in fact, she will need to make that oath. But the oath that we're talking about is an oath that she was not paid more than the value. So if the field was 200, her ketubah was 200, then what she's going to swear is, first she's going to swear that she was never paid the 200 for her ketubah, and then she's going to swear that when I sold the piece of property that was estimated at a value of 200, I only got 200. I didn't get 400 for it. Okay, and so those would be the two oaths. So that's question number one that Tosfos asks. Tosfos asks a second question: why doesn't she require an announcement when the court would need to announce if it attempted to sell? Meaning, when she tries to sell, there's no hachraza, right? We say at the end, "Ein tzricha hachraza." But if the court were to try to sell this asset, then it would require an announcement. So Tosfos wonders, why is it that there's different? So when she, and so the Tosfos answers that when she sells, the sale is not valid if done below the appraised value. We're going to see that later today in the next Mishnah, that if she sells, let's say she has, she's owed $200 and the property is worth $400. And so the orphans are supposed to get the $200 different. Let's say she can only sell it for $3.99. So she only sold it for $1 less. Nope, no good sale. She because she didn't get the orphans the profit that they were expecting, that sale is no good. Now, if the Beis Din had sold it, then it would be a valid sale. And so as a result, Tosfos explains that because we have because the orphans have this extra protection of, if the sale isn't at a good price, they get to cancel it effectively. So as a result, that's why there's no announcement needed for her sale. Whereas when it comes to the Beis Din, if they sell it, it's going to be a valid sale. And so as a result, therefore they need to do an announcement. Okay, so that's Tosfos' answer. The Ran has I think, an awesome answer, and he points out that if the woman tries to collect through Beit Din as opposed to outside of Beit Din, well, we said at the beginning of today that she no longer has the benefit of getting paid from the estate. And so as a result, the delay associated with the with an announcement, a 30-day, because what they do is they would announce it and then they'd wait 30 days to see if anybody came in at a higher price, and then is not going to cost the orphans anything, because they're not going to be paying for her food any longer. However, if she was doing the sale without Beis Din's involvement, then she gets to still collect her food. And so as a result, the Ran suggests that the reason that we don't require her to do an announcement when she sells it on her own is because if she were to sell it on her own, she's still getting paid by the orphans for their food. So the orphans are very much interested in her selling the property as soon as possible. So those are two potential answers, and I actually like a combination of the two. That the combination of both the fact that she's continuing to get paid, so we want to try and have this sale happen as quickly as possible. And as Tosfos points out, we want to make sure that, and we know that their orphans are protected, because any failure to sell at an appraised value is going to cause the transaction to not go through. So that is our Gemara, and now we're ready for the next Mishnah. And so the next Mishnah says the following: Almana shahaisa ksubasa masayim. So a woman was owed 200, umakra shavamana b'masayim, and she sold a piece of property that was appraised at 100 for 200. So she got her full value. Well, you know what? Shavamasayim, or remarkably, let's say the property was worth 200. Bimana, and she sold it only for 100. In both of these cases, and the Gemara is going to try to understand why both of these cases this is true. This kabla ksubasa, she's gotten everything that she needed. So even though in the first case, she got a great deal for the orphans, and she doesn't get anything extra. So even though she sold a piece of property that was worth 100 for 200, and you might think, well, let her join, pocket a little bit of that. Sorry, Charlie, no pocketing of any of the profit. And then when she sold a piece of property that was worth 200 for only 100, you might think that the orphans and she would have to split the losses. But no, again, sorry, Charlie, for the wife, she loses the whole 100. It's for Starkist, sorry, Charlie. Yes, exactly. That's where I got it from. You're absolutely right. Okay, so that was ruling number 1 in the Mishnah. So we're going to get to the case where it gets canceled in a moment. So, but because in this case, because the orphans don't lose anything, it doesn't get canceled. It's only, right, the orphans don't lose anything when a piece of property that's worth 200 is sold for 100. The orphans don't lose anything because her entire debt, which is equal to 200, is quashed. If her debt was not 200, it would still be a problem. If her debt was less than 200, it would be a problem. So, Haisa Ksuba Samana, what happens if her Ksuba was 100? Umachra Shavamana Bedinar Bimana, and now she sells a piece of property that was worth 101, and now she sells it for 100. So she only lost 1%, less than 1% of the value. Machra Batal. Her sale is null and void. Afilu Hiomeris, and it's null and void even if she were to say, Achazir dinar liyorshim, I'll just take 99. I just want my money. And even then, it's going to be a null and void sale. She can't make it up. Machra batal. Her sale is still going to be void. Now, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, no. If it's that little a difference, we're going to as long as she makes it up for the orphans, we're going to be fine. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, La'olam michra kayim. Really, that kind of situation, the last situation where she makes it up, is a valid sale. Only if there was enough left over that Besada Bas Tisha Kabin, that she sold an extra area that would produce 9 kav. So the point is that if the amount less that she gets is sufficient, that she should have been able to sell this in 2 separate lots. So you have a big field that's worth, let's say that she's owed 200, and you have a big field that's worth 300. Okay, and that field can be divided. Let's say the minimum field size is worth 100. So that field could have been sold in 2 separate pieces, a 200 piece and a 100 piece. So in that situation, then Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, look, if she sells the whole 300 for 200, even if she only agrees to accept 100, we're not going to, so the orphans don't lose anything. We're not going to allow that transaction to go through because she could have broken the sale up into 2 pieces. She could have sold the 200 separately and the 100 separately. And we want, and in that situation, we're going to force her to sell them separately. Uvagina bas chatzikav. And when it comes to a vegetable area, so meaning not out in the field, so then half a kav. Divrei Rabbi Akiva base rova. And according to Rabbi Akiva, it's even a quarter of a kav. I think I got this. Yeah, I got to make a little edit in my thing on the screen because I didn't put in the vegetable garden case. Okay, but in any event, the point is that both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel say that if in fact the amount extra that she sold is sufficiently large, even if she is going to make the orphans whole, it's going to be problematic. So Haisik Sa Arba Zuz. Now, last case of our Mishnah, if the Ksuba was worth 400 zuz, and she's got 4 pieces of property, each that are worth 100, right? 4 pieces of property, each worth 100, that totals 400, exactly. So she'll be paid in full. And she sells 3 of them, each for 100. So she's got 300. And now Ula Achron Yafa Mana V'Dinar Mana. And now her last one is worth 101 and she sells it for 100. So she's made 4 sales. The question is, one of them didn't get the full value. Are all the sales not good, or just the last sale? That's the question. So shel achron batel, the Mishnah answers that the last one is not a good sale, but shel kulan machron kayam. But the first 3, because she got full value, are all valid sales. So it's not like we suspect that because she didn't do a good job on the last one, we're going to say maybe she didn't do a good job on all of them, but rather we'll say that it's okay. We're just going to cancel the last of them. So Maishna, so now we ask, the Gemara begins by picking up with the first case. And why is it that if she takes the loss but doesn't join in the benefit? Maishna shava masayim b'mana. What's the difference between the case where she sells something that's worth 200 for 100, where we say that she suffers the entire loss of the 100, to amri la at asadat, that we say to her that you lost? Shava mana b'masayim nami. Well, when she sells something that's worth 100 for 200, was tema ana aravchana. You say she should be able to say that I benefited. I was the one who caught this profit. So Amarav Nachman, Amarav Baravua, as we turn to page Tzadachet Amabet. So Kan Shana Rabbi, that Rabbi taught about this particular issue, Hakol Val Hamos. Everything goes to the owner of the money. Meaning, if you are making the investment and I ask Stan to go shopping for me and he gets a great deal for me, then Stan has done me a great favor, but Stan doesn't get to participate in it because I am the principal and I sent Stan to do the job and he did it very well. So I say, thank you very much, Stan. But that's it. That's the story. I'm sorry, but you were doing me a favor, so you don't get paid. I mean, maybe you get paid because I pay you as a worker, but you don't as an employee, but you don't get to share in the benefit. So, all right, Kidditanya, and we have a brisa. Now, this brisa that we're about to cite doesn't actually say what we're supposed to say. So let's take a look and we'll see, and then we're going to deal with it. So Hosifulo achas yasera. If a seller throws in an extra item into a package, hakol l'shaliach, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. There, everything goes to the agent. Well, that wasn't what we said. And Rabbi Yossi Omer choken. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, it doesn't go to the agent. It gets divided between the principal and the agent. Well, that also wasn't what we said. Well, here's what we said. Tanya, once again, we have a question. Rabbi Yossi Omer hakol balamos. We also have a statement of Rabbi Yossi that says everything goes to the owner of the money. So, of course, that is the real statement that we are bringing here to bring as a proof. But as we do so, we're also going to now try to explain Rabbi Yossi's 2 inconsistent statements. In one statement, he says that when Stan goes out shopping for me and saves me $100, Stan and I split it. And in the other situation, he says that I get the whole benefit of Stan's excellent deal. So Rami Bar Chama explains the distinction. Lo kasha, kan bedavar sheyesh lo kitzva, kan bedavar she'ein lo kitzva. So the question is when I sent Stan to buy me a table, and is there a fixed market price for the table? In which case, if there's a fixed market price, so then Stan will share in the great deal that he got. If this table is supposed to be sold for 100 and Stan gets a fabulous deal and gets it half off and gets it for $50, so then Stan gets $25 of the benefit and I get $25 of the benefit. We just basically split it. And Tosos, and Rashi explains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6 and 7 lines down in the Rashi. Sheyesh lo kitzva, kigon kitnis hanimkar bechanus, right? You have some kind of legume that's sold in the store, b'mida, with some kind of measurement, mida malay, with some malay kli, with some kind of full vessel, bipruta, at some particular price. So in that situation, im hosifu achat, if you get an extra scooping, You say it's clear that the seller, the merchant, was giving it as a present, and Havi, and it was a present. Yesh lomar d'shliach nitna, v'yesh lomar l'bal mos nitna. And Rashi says it's unclear. Did Stan get this great deal because he's a good friend with the merchant, or did Stan get this great deal because I'm a good friend of the merchant, and the merchant knew that Stan was working on my behalf? And so as a result, from Rashi's perspective, and this is the way the Ramah paskins, that in fact it depends on what the merchant was really intending. And so if the merchant said explicitly, Stan, I love you, I wouldn't give this deal to anybody else, I'm giving it just to you, well then Stan would get the whole thing. And if the guy says to Stan, David, I really think he's terrific. He teaches a great daf yomi. So as a result, I want to make sure that he gets a good deal on the table that he's on which he's teaching the daf yomi. So then I would get the whole thing. So that is the way Rashi understands it. There are other opinions that give it a different explanation, but we'll stick with Rashi for the moment. So kan b'dvar she'ein lo kitzva. And when is it that all the money goes to me? That's where there isn't a fixed price. I sent Stan on a job to get me, to get a Monet. All right. And so as a result, there's no set price for a Monet. And so if Stan happens to get a phenomenal deal, and even I admit that it's way better than I would have ever imagined, yeah, I might want to give him a gift, but the benefit, he did it all on my behalf. And so as a result, so thank you so much for the Monet. I really appreciate it. Okay, so, all right, you're going to get, okay, you got it. All right, so you get me the Monet, I'll get you the Rembrandt, and we'll call it a deal. No, I'm just joking. All right, so Amar Rav Papa, Hilchasa, and the Rav Papa now says that the halakha is like we just said, davar sheyesh lo kitzva, if there is something that has a fixed price in the marketplace, cholkin, then the agent and the principal divide it. Davar she'ein lo kitzva, if there's no fixed price, hakol balamos, then everything goes to the principal. Everything goes to the person who put up the money. So my kamashmalan, everybody knows that when Rabbi Yossi, and I'm just joking when I said that, when Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda argue, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. And so as a result, we don't need anybody to tell us who the halacha is like. So what is Rav Papa telling us? So Shinuya Deshanin and Shinuya who that what he's teaching us is that when Rami Bar Chama gave the answer to what appeared to be an inconsistency in Rabbi Yossi, he was giving an explanation that is accurate, and this explanation is correct. And so as a result, he was telling us that that's the right answer. Okay, so now we're going to conclude today with a question. We'll try one answer, and for the second answer, you'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow. So Ibailahu, so we asked this great question. Amr Le, so if somebody says to the agent, so you tell me your thoughts about this, Mark, okay? So Zaben Lilitka, I tell you to sell one of my fields, okay, and sell me a lesech field, a field that's the Azul, the Zabinle Korah. And you didn't just sell one of my fields. There were two fields next to each other. And you said, I'm going to do David a big favor. He wants to sell one. I'm going to sell two. And so you sold two of my fields. So now the question is, so Mosif al, what's the story? Do we say Mosif al Dvaravu, that when you sold both the double field, you were adding to what you did for me, and so litka mia kani, and so as a result, if the guy comes back and says, you know what, he didn't have the authority to sell two, so it's clear that the second half of my field wasn't a valid sale. But when we undo that sale, does the first half take effect? Does the half that he did that was effectively what I wanted take effect? Or do we say that the whole transaction was not a good transaction? So that's the question. Oh, Dilma, Mavir Advaravu. Or when Mark sells that field, when he sold twice what I asked him to, did he do nothing of what I asked? Meaning Velitka Namilokani. And so as a result, even the first half of the field wouldn't be a good sale? It's a good question, right? I don't know the answer. And so let's take a look and we'll see what the Gemara says. So Amar Rav Yaakov Minahar Pekod, Mishmei de Ravina. So Rav Yaakov from Nahar Pekod says in the name of Ravina, Tashma, come here, I'll tell you a Mishnah that maybe gives us the answer. So this Mishnah is in Me'ila Daf Kaf Amud Aleph. So Amar Baal Habayis L'Shlucha. So of course, we're talking about Me'ila. So we're talking about an object that was hektish, that was kodesh. So maybe it was like a piece of sacrificial meat or something like that. And what happens? So Amar Baal Bayis L'Shlucho. So the person, the homeowner, says to, so I will say to Mark, and because I know that Stan is coming over, so I say to Mark, listen, Mark, give Stan a piece of the meat that I have out here, okay? All right. So Tain Lahen Chaticha L'Orchin, go give it to the Stan, who's my guest. All right. It's a piece of meat. We'll call it a $10 piece of meat. Okay, not too expensive. V'hu omer talush time. And what did Mark? Mark says, you know what? I think Stan's terrific. I want to give him 2 pieces of meat. And of course, now again, remember, everybody forgets that these pieces of meat are actually hektish. They belong to the Beis Hamikdash. So we're violating the prohibition of Me'ila. But so now Mark gave to Stan 2 pieces. V'hei natlu shalosh. And Stan, my guest, he's like, well, Mark said that I should take 2. I'm going to take 3. So now every one of us has done something independently that we've taken something from hektish. So kulan ma'alu. Too much meat? Yeah, it's too much. We're going to get fat. So all right, but kulan ma'alu. So all 3 of us, I, Mark, and Stan, have all been done me'ila from the Beit HaMikdash. We've accidentally stolen from the Beit HaMikdash because we didn't realize that what we were talking about was hektish. All right. So now we're going to analyze this. So if we say that when Mark gives a double portion to Stan, he is adding to what I already did, meaning I gave 1, Mark gives 2. So he's not undermining what I did. What I said, well, mishum haki bala bias ma'al. Well, then it makes sense that I would also have violated Me'ila because ela amrat ma'avir al dvarav havi. But if we say that when Mark gives double the portion to Stan, that he's not doing what I said, and it's as if he did something that violates what I said, well, bala bias amaymal. Why would I have committed Me'ila? Because v'hatanan, we have that Mishnah that says if a agent, this is the main instance of where an agent can do something on somebody's behalf that is a sin, and we will attribute it to the actor, to the principal. If a messenger does an agent does what he was supposed to do, so then balabayas mal, then the owner who sent him is the one who did the me'ila, not necessarily the agent. But lo asher, if he doesn't do what he was supposed to do, shliach mal, then it's the shliach mal. And what did we say in our case where I said 1 and Mark said 2 and Stan ended up taking 3? He said that all 3 of us had done me'ila. So I had done me'ila. So it seems like from this Mishnah clear that when Mark says 2, he's doing my job. Well, no, you don't have to necessarily say that. We can say that this is the following case. Da'amr lahu, it's a case where Mark said the following to Stan. Take 1 at the request of the balabayas, and 1 at my request. The shaklu inu tlas. And then, of course, again, the guy took 3. So the point is now because he has specifically said that my shlichus was only for 1, so it's clear he did my shlichus. But in the case where Mark sells 2 of my fields instead of 1, so we still don't have an answer. So if you want to see what the answer might be, you're going to have to come back tomorrow. Yeah, well, so we're assuming that the person didn't say that. So that's the whole point. You're absolutely right. If the person said that, then our answer here would be exactly right. Then we would say, if Mark had said, I'm selling this one field on behalf of David because he wanted me to, and I'm selling this other one because I think he wants me to, so then the first one would be a valid sale and the second one would be not valid sale.
If he's talking as a group, then he would be.
Well, we have not definitively proven it, because we don't know whether when we assume a sale of something, do we say that it's as if I wanted each piece and he just grouped them together, or do we say no, it's all or nothing? That's really the question. Do we say all or nothing? So what? That, well, you mean that would be bad for me? Correct, 100%. That's part of what's going on.
David, what they said.
Maybe, we don't know. We have, I'm sorry that you're gonna have to find out. I'll try and remember to tell you on Friday if you don't come tomorrow, because he says that it's gonna rain tomorrow morning. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording. Have a great day, everybody.
Well, something happened last night.